Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Hobby Tips. Today we're gonna talk about wet palettes and how to create one. There are many good videos on this on YouTube already. I myself got the tip from Uncle Atom over at Tabletop Minions, link here, and it have changed my painting to the better. Anyhow, for me it was like I knew about a wet palette. I knew a guy who used a wet palette, but that was the same guy who used an airbrush when nobody else was. So for me it was like one of those things that I didn't need to paint a proper miniature. But just with the airbrush that I obviously also use quite a lot now, some of these upgrades are really worthwhile. And the wet palette will cost you nothing, probably, or next to nothing, depending on what you already have. So for the longest time I used this Tupperware box, and recently acquired this one. This one we've had in the house for a long time, and this one cost me less than $1. And you'll need an airtight box, and I'd suggest going for one that doesn't have too high edges, because the bottom of it is gonna be your palette. Anyway, we'll put this one aside for now. The reason why I like this one is that the lid opens and stand on its own, and with the other one I got annoyed having to find a place to put the lid when I was painting. The next thing you'll need is some paper towel. I prefer toilet paper. I know a lot of people use paper towel, but this fits perfectly down most of the Tupperware things I've seen used. Depending on the thickness and the quality of the paper, and you'll have to experiment a bit with that, you'll need a few layers. I find 2 or 3 is plenty. And if it doesn't fit exactly, it's toilet paper. It's easy to just boop. And just because we want it to look good, we turn it around like this. So far so good. This most people would be able to manage at home without buying any new products. Next, we'll need some parchment paper or baking paper. Look in the kitchen. I am positive that if you have an oven, you'll likely have this. If not, it is really cheap, and one roll of this will last you a long time. What you want to do is cut a piece that fits inside your palette of choice. And this is not rocket science. There is definitely room for a bit of error, and you can just take it easier on that one. We know that the toilet paper fits, so if in doubt, you can just put down a piece of paper like this. Whoop. And then it's just a matter of measuring. And usually I just cut out a whole stack. So we put that in here. Still barely any effort, and absolutely not an expensive hobby tool. Next we add some water. I used demineralized water, but in most areas of the world regular tap water will do just fine. Basically, if you thin your paints with water, then water will also be sufficient for a wet palette. But I don't have a tap in my studio, and I always have a bottle of this, so it's also easier like that. And then you just pour in a bit of water, move it around a bit, let the paper suck it up, and press down the paper. And that's basically that. One wet palette. No reason to go out and buy an official one, though I have a friend who got the Privateer Press wet palette and is very happy with that. So it's not a bad product, it's just possible to make your own quite easily. So why get a wet palette? First of all, you should never paint without a palette anyway, so you might as well use this one. It makes mixing way easier. The paints will almost never dry out, If you overload it with water, they might get too thin, so be wary of that. If you put too much paper and therefore too much water, then when you leave the palette overnight, you might come back and find that you've created a bunch of glazes. But anyway, you can close it and put it aside and come back days later and still have the same paint mix ready at hand. Also, it auto thins the paints a little. I still have some demineralized water and some various mediums at hand, but it saves a lot of time and effort, and once you get used to it, it's like you'll just know what consistency you get from the various brands of paint once they get on the wet palette, and you'll know how much further thinning will be needed. Games Workshop paints obviously will still need quite a bit of thinning, while Reba and Vallejo is almost just good to go out of the bottle once they get on this. Or at least that's my experience. I don't use it for washes. I keep a stack of these at hand when washing or using effect paints and for dry brushing. So regular palettes still have a place on the Hobby Workshop bench. So yeah, that's it for now. Check back soon and take care and bye bye.